Welcome, debating metalheads, to a special edition of Debating Metal. I'm your host, Kenneth Dean, the Dean of Metal, along with my co-pilot, Chris Kaye. This past weekend, Chris and I drove up to Fort Worth, Texas, from the outskirts of Houston, where we live, to go see Iron Maiden in concert. And while we were driving up there, we decided it would be a great time to record an episode. So that's what we did. We went back to what we did when we first met. We brought up a subject and we just started talking about it. So what was the topic, you ask? Why all the hate?
Each of the three bands we're going to discuss today have gone through a period or periods of receiving lots of hate. From the days of Newgrounds fame to modern meme culture, these bands have suffered some of the worst of it following periods of massive success. We'll discuss if it was warranted, how the bands handled it, and if they've been able to recover. Let's talk about Nickelback, Creed, and Metallica.
So sit back, relax, turn it up to 11, and let the debate begin.
So, Chris, why all the hate? Why does everyone, not everyone, but why do so many people hate Nickelback? Why do so many people hate Creed? And why do so many people hate Metallica? So we're going to go ahead and start with Nickelback.
Okay. So, I can remember a time, I guess the main popularity of Nickelback and Creed would be right around, say, early 2000s.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah, because I remember both of those bands being pretty popular in like 2000.
Creed started in '98, so their main popularity hit '99, 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
Nickelback, I think, was a little bit after that.
Was it? Because I remember the Photograph song. I remember it like being in high school talking about.
Well, Photograph was about, I think, was 2006, somewhere in that. Yeah, because the album that it's off of, All the Right Reasons. I remember that album had been out. I moved to Texas.
So maybe the
listening to that album
controversy was like more when I was in college,
right.
where there were the two songs that sounded kind of the same.
Oh yeah.
Well, regardless, like early 2000s, those bands were kind of coming into their biggest years, and I remember with Nickelback, they were really popular. I was honestly never a fan, but I remember hearing their music all the time. It was in constant play on the radio, and people I was going to school with were big fans of them. And then I want to say somebody made a joke online. I wish I could tell you more about it, but I remember it became almost like cool to hate Nickelback. And I just never understood how you could go from overnight, being a big fan to almost just like choosing to hate them only to please other people around you. That was a way I viewed it, at least.
Well, I mean, so let's see. We're picking on Nickelback in this particular situation. You haven't seen the documentary that's out on them, right? That's a really cool. If you get a chance to see that documentary, because it really actually goes over what happened and how they were the biggest band in the world, let's say, for what it's worth at the time. I think it was right around, the Photograph album, All the Right Reasons, Rockstar, and what's the other one? Rockstar, Animals. So that Photograph, that album, All the Right Reasons, was huge, and then all of a sudden they became a meme.
Yeah.
And the meme is what really started the hate for Nickelback. But it still turns around, the question that we're asking is why? Why all the hate? What is it that Nickelback has done to garner so much hate? I mean, I can understand certain other things about the other two bands that we're going to talk about, but in Nickelback's case, it's like, okay, they got picked on because they had two songs that sounded the same, right? They got picked on because they were huge and it was corporate, for lack of a better term. in many people's eyes, and it was just like they were just churning out the same stuff over and over again. But it's a formula that worked, so why not continue the formula? Just
so around what year did that kind of happen? That like the meme.
I think I want to say 2007, 2008, somewhere around there. I'm not sure.
So, I mean, what was going on musically at the time that maybe changed the mind of people? Like, was there anything that, like, new styles or anything that were coming out that, Like,
yeah,
I think some of it was a lot of rock music in general started to drop off. Culture started changing. I remember, we've talked about wrestling before, like, wrestling show themes and that kind of stuff used to all be, like, metal and rock, and all of that was kind of dying off and kind of being subverted by, like, rap culture and stuff too. So it became uncool to like certain styles of bands, and a lot of that stuff that was around, like, there was like the new metal, and then there was like the hard rock and a little bit of that kind of stuff that all, like, I kind of mentally put together, because a lot of, you'd see, like, I don't know, certain groups of musicians traveled in the same circles or would be playing on the same radio stations, and they didn't necessarily all, have the same genre of music. But I like the Buzz here in Houston used to play a lot of Nickelback and POD and Drowning Pool.
Played a lot of Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah, so all those I kind of, like, even though they're not the same genres of music per se, but, like, I kind of mentally put all of those together, and then there's just this point where that wasn't cool anymore. And it's not like the quality of music changed or they were bad people or anything like that. So I think it's suddenly, like, it is a lot of the sheep mentality of, like, if it's not cool, then I'm not going to do it, even though I do like it.
I mean, look, we've had discussions about why bands' popularity go up and down. The albums are better than others, songs are better than others. They went through a phase in that late 2000s, early 2010s, where they may have had one or two good songs on an album, but the rest of the album was just mediocre Nickelback.
Yeah, I think they went through something like Winger did when Beavis and Butthead called out Winger.
Yeah.
So Nickelback kind of felt that same attack on them, but for no really good reason other than it was quote unquote funny.
Well, and what's funny about that is that I remember listening to something with Joe Elliott from Def Leppard, and I think they were sharing a venue or sharing a festival or something like that, and Joe Elliott walked past what's his face, Chad Kroeger, and as he walked past him, he said, "Thank you," and Chad's like, "Thank you for what?" And he's like, "Because thank you for taking away the fact that we're no longer the most hated band in the music industry."
That's pretty good.
And it's like, same thing with Def Leppard. I think the biggest thing that I feel in Nickelback's case, and I think in all three bands that we're going to talk about, in all their cases, I believe it's jealousy. Whether it's industry jealousy, whether it's fan jealousy, or even just, and when I say industry jealousy, I'm not even talking about the musicians themselves, because I think the musicians, the peer jealousy is also existent there too.
Okay.
But like in Nickelback's case, it was like once they had a hit, they couldn't stop writing hits, and it's like,
that's true.
Well, why are you mad at him for continuing to write hits? Why do you hate Chad Kroeger? Because the guy knows how to fucking write a hit. It's like, don't get mad at him. You want to do something about it? Write a hit. Go ahead and write a hit. You put up the hook. You do the melody. You do all the shit, and let's see if you got a hit single on your hand. I mean, you can't get mad at the guy for writing good music, whether you like the music or not. it's.
I mean, I think there's some legitimacy to some of the hate they get. Like, I always go back to, like, I don't like their lyrics. I don't like the way that Chad writes, like, his lyrical structure. I think the way, a lot of the rhyming that, like, is very kind of childish. So for me, it doesn't do anything. And if you like Nickelback, cool. Like, I'm not talking down on it or anything like that. But at the same time, like, for me, it's just, it doesn't do anything to, like, I like music that subverts expectations, that kind of, like, makes me think. And sometimes I think that structurally the song may go one way and it does something different. And so I'm always kind of driven by things like that. But, like, I don't like very predictable music. And so I think that's kind of in that, like, progressive realm. Like, I like more progressive metal.
Right. And I get that. Now, see, to the contrary of you, I like Chad's style of songwriting. I love the way he writes a melody and kind of chops up the lyrics to work around the melody of the song. I think there's a talent in that to be able to then structure it in a way for you to be able to sing it, I think is a talent. You know, now again, obviously because you're not a fan of it, it's not for everyone.
It's for me. It's less like, so, like, his timing as far as the way he puts it together in the song, and that doesn't bother me. It's actually just the lyrical content that I'm not a big fan of. Like, if you just took all the words out and it was just the, you know, like, ba 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 ba, you know, like, I'm okay with the way he times everything out. It's just I don't like that, his actual, let's say, quote unquote, poetry.
Well, I mean, his poetry is no different than Paul Stanley's.
I didn't say I like that either.
I mean, but it's funny, you know, because you appreciate Kiss more now than you have in the past. But realistically, there's no difference between, you know, How You Remind Me and Love Gun from Kiss, because it's all about I want to fucking, or let's go backwards. Between Love Gun or Shock Me or Ladies Room from Kiss, then you're talking about Animals from Nickelback, or there's Bottoms Up. There's another song, Something in Your Mouth from Nickelback. Like, they're all along the same kind of lines. They're all about sex. They're all about alcohol. You know.
Well, I do like Paul Stanley's vocals better too. I mean, that's another thing about Chad Kroeger. I've never been able to really understand this. I don't like his vocals. But I think there are a number of people that probably do agree with me in some of the things that I'm saying. Like, so I think there is some justified dislike of a lot of bands, just in general. Not everybody's going to like every band that's out there, but I think somebody said something enough that it became just okay to hate them, or funny to hate them, or, you know, they use them as the example of hate in music.
Oh yeah, and it's amazing that, you know, they definitely talk about it in the documentary, but it happened virtually overnight.
Yeah,
and it was I think it was in between albums, and all of a sudden it was like, what do you mean? Like, what? How come all of a sudden no one wants to hear our music?
Yeah,
you know, and that is one of those, that's unnerving in many ways. It's all of a sudden, you know, you quote unquote go to work one day, everybody loves you, and then, you know, you come back on Monday after the weekend and, like, no one can stand your face anymore, you know, or your voice or your song, or your photograph, you know. But that's wild to think about, you know.
Yeah, it really is. I think for the most part, the hate towards Nickelback is unwarranted. I think people are coming around on them now because it's just been a long enough time period where, like, the joke is done, the joke's kind of over. I don't know who the current. I'm curious who that current person is. because I don't listen to a lot of like modern music now. So I'm curious who that person is that's taking the brunt of things. For a while, I would say it was Justin Bieber, right? Like a lot of the jokes that I would hear from people were kind of about him because of who he was. He was a young kid, and I think he took the brunt of things for a little while. But you know, there's always these musicians out there that it's just like you know, something about them. Maybe it's success or whatever level of, you know.
Well, you got Justin Bieber was that way for a while. The Jonas Brothers were that way for a while.
Yeah.
Ed Sheeran. I mean, Ed Sheeran's playing stadiums, and there's a lot of people who sit there and say they can't stand him.
Mm.
You know.
Don't know enough about him to tell you. But,
no, I don't know enough about him either, but I do know he's playing stadiums just like Metallica, and he's got the same type of setup.
Yeah.
You know, got these big towers, and just like Metallica, and he's playing stadiums just like them. So it's you know, and then last summer, Metallica and Taylor Swift were trading records every weekend. You know, who could bring in the most people in this venue compared to that? You know, one week
maybe
to
they
the next.
should do a tour together.
You know what? That would be a lot of people.
That would be a lot of people. Yeah.
That would be a lot of people. So Nickelback, you know, it's one of those things happened. Did they recover? Yes, but they're not the same band they once were.
Not to the same level, but
You know.
like I think the biggest period of hate is definitely over.
I think so.
I think people are okay with saying they like them again, which is cool. Like I've always said it. Like whatever kind of music you enjoy, like life's too short not to enjoy it. So don't let somebody, you know, tell you not to listen to something just because they don't like it.
Right, exactly. All right, so now, you know, we've talked about Nickelback, but okay, so let's talk about a band that similar type of hate, but I think it was a little bit more.
Well, it's different reasons.
There was a lot more mocking of Creed. You know, like I've been into Creed since they basically first came out. When I first heard My Own Prison, I thought that song was amazing. Bought the album, think the album is great. You know, they've later changed a little bit of their formula, you know, from the second album, you know, when they had With Arms Wide Open and that big hit. But they're also a lot heavier than the singles make them out to be. You know, and I know you're not a big fan, but you've come to quote unquote appreciate them in recent years.
I almost ironically enjoy them, but I don't ever go out of my way to listen to them, right? So Creed, obviously, like early 2000s, got really popular. I don't think I knew too many people in school that weren't, you know, some level of fan. I remember pretty much my freshman year, I think somewhere right around there, that was like the peak popularity, like 2001. Might have been a little bit after that, but that was the most that I heard about them. My sister was a big fan. A lot of my friends were. Again, they were a band that it just didn't really do it for me because I was really getting into like heavier stuff. And so, like, I was trying to kind of get away from that kind of music. But I mean, I had to go, you know, I had to listen to them with, you know, riding around with my sister in the car and stuff like that. But there were songs that I appreciated, and I always liked Mark Tremonti's playing. But I think the biggest thing was they, like, when people started calling them out as a Christian band, I think that's really where they started taking hits, and I think it's a really stupid reason. I'm not a religious person myself. I definitely see the merits in it for people. We're not going to go into detail on that, I'm sure.
Well, and it's really only based on one song.
Yeah, but
you know, My Own Prison, because they talk about Gabriel, you know, at the end of the song.
That was on the first album, though. So I mean, I think people are maybe going back and finding that album. But no, like, Can You Take Me Higher has religious overtones. Outskirts, and some of the other songs, like there's nothing that's direct, and the band never wanted to be a religious band. They never claimed to be. I think Scott Stapp, once he started getting into like some of his drug problems, he would say some different things, but like for the most part, I think it was just a bunch of word of mouth stuff that was like defaming them for really no reason. And it's sad to even say defaming, for just possibly being a religious band.
Yeah, I mean, I heard the same things when they came out, and I mean, at least Mark tried to quickly diffuse that by saying that there was nothing about the band that was religious. And, the flip side was Scott, talked about his religious upbringing in his interviews. And, that had a lot to do with the lyrics that he wrote. Understandable. Get it. I get that. But that doesn't necessarily mean just because you have religious overtones that you're a Christian band, because there are plenty of religious overtones in Judas Priest, in Metallica,
Striper.
Yes, Striper, but they are a Christian band. So it's those things that there's always going to be overtones for certain types of songs and certain types of lyrics that are chosen to be sung on that song.
Well, I mean, I think people write by their experience in life, right? And so some of that is going to be whatever you're feeling or thinking at the time, and if that's what he was writing, cool, but it was never like directly put out there. It wasn't like there was a song like "I Love Jesus,"
Right.
And so it's just a bunch of silliness. Somebody glommed onto this, they're a religious band, and I'm not going to listen to somebody tell me that. And they weren't saying anything. Like, I mean, they're saying something with their music, but again, music is kind of up for interpretation a lot of times. You can know what the writer was writing behind it. You can understand that, but at the same time, if the lyrics hit you in a certain way and that you perceive them to be related to something in your life, then that's what the music is. Like, it's all organic. It's not like I remember being in high school and I talking to a teacher, discussing poetry, and they're asking, what did this mean? And it's like, in their minds, it's not open for interpretation. It has to be by the definition of whatever. It's bullshit. Like, music, art, they're all open for interpretation.
And I think in many cases, the artists themselves allow that and want that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard James Hetfield talk about, oh, that's what you get from my song. That's great. That's not necessarily the way I initially wrote about it that way, but if that's your interpretation, that's awesome.
Yeah,
because that's the feeling that you're getting from it. Then by all means, that's great.
I've always appreciated when bands don't tell you sometimes what their music's about. Like, and I wonder, like, you go to Red Hot Chili Peppers or whatever, and then, like, I wonder if he even knows what he's writing about sometimes. but at the same time, there are some songs that are written in such prose that you don't really know what's being said, but it means something to the writer, and you may be able to interpret that yourself. But back to Creed. I don't really get why the hate was there. I mean, I get why they imploded, and some of that, was drug related, or just not being able to see eye to eye. I think at some point Mark Tremonti was always going to want to play solos, and so, like, some of that separation makes sense to me. But the hate, it just comes from a place of I guess people just not wanting to be told what to do. I guess there was some stuff going on at the time. I don't remember if it was the early 2000s when all of the priest stuff was coming out, like the Catholic priests.
I'm not following.
There was some sketchy stuff that was going on with Catholic priests, and
That's been going on for hundreds of years.
No, but it wasn't in the news for hundreds of years. Yeah.
Oh, you mean like the things with the Cardinals and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I mean, I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but the biggest thing, my takeaway for the hate on Creed, I believe, had a lot to do, again, jealousy within the industry, and you're talking about. I mean, the biggest, I think, more than anything else, the hate went towards Scott Stapp, right? Because
For sure.
he's this guy.
His vocal
Tones, his technique, his style. He had a way of singing that was easily mockable.
And then people were kind of making fun of how he was ripping off Eddie Vedder and some of those guys that sang in a way that, like, it's that style. I don't know what
It's
you
his
call
style.
it.
I mean, it's just he's got a low tone to his voice, and I don't know if, I guess you would call it a baritone.
But it's a lack of clarity.
Oh, you mean like Eddie Vedder and Yellow Ledbetter?
Yeah,
Not being able to understand the lyrics. I get that, and he had a little bit of that, but at the same time, you're talking about a band. So you're making fun of Scott Stapp. Okay, I get that, right? But you look at the rest of the band. Mark Tremonti, one of the freaking great guitar players. I mean, and I say young, but he's not even that young anymore per se. But you're talking about one of the top 10 guitar players in the world that just easily identifiable. Amazing talent. The rest of the band, the rhythm section, I mean, they fired Brian Marshall, and then when the band got back together to become Alter Bridge, the first person they called was Brian to say, "Hey, we got this new band with a new singer. Come join us." And then you got Scott Phillips on drums. Scott's an amazing drummer. I mean, he does not get enough credit at all for the work that he does in that band. Between Creed and Alter Bridge, the stuff that he's come up with is just absolutely amazing.
But I think Tremonti really stepped out on his own more when he was, obviously with the solo stuff, but when he went to Alter Bridge instead of Creed, that allowed him to do more than he was allowed to do with Creed.
Oh, absolutely.
He started doing solos. He started playing, like, predominantly writing the music how he would want it to be, rather than making a compromise.
Right.
And so, to me, like, I love Alter Bridge. We did an episode about Alter Bridge a while back. We've professed what we've said. Like, I've been to see them live. You've been to see them live. So that's a band that I can really enjoy. Whereas with Creed, I just feel like Tremonti's not able to, really show himself in full.
Exactly, and it's funny you bring that up because when they had, they broke up the first time, and then they reunited in, I believe it was 2009 or something like that, or somewhere around there. When they got back together the first time, and then they came out with the album Full Circle. When they were making that album, Tremonti told Scott Stapp, he said, "By the way, I'm doing guitar solos. Because no more of this no guitar solo stuff." And Scott Stapp was fine with it. He had grown up, or moved on, or realized that style of music wasn't the same anymore. So that was good to hear. And there was occasional good solos in earlier Creed stuff, but it definitely wasn't what it was later on. It was Full Circle. Now, I mean, you think about it now, like, they got back together earlier this year and announced a cruise. That their first shows took place on a cruise. Cruise sells out in a couple of days. They had to, so much demand, they actually had to add another cruise. And now I believe they're touring next year or something like that. So you have this incredible demand for Creed that no one realized was there before.
Yeah.
Until, they got back together. And I believe Mark is extremely happy about that, which is interesting because I know he was extremely happy with Alter Bridge. I mean, they're his bands. Which is weird because you have Miles, who's in Alter Bridge, but he's also the lead singer for Slash featuring Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators, which is just way too long of a name. Damn. But that's the official name of the band, which is crazy. But he's got these two bands, and then he's doing solo stuff. Slash got solo stuff in Guns N' Roses. And
I think that's okay now. Like a lot of musicians do other side projects, and it doesn't take away from the band that they're in. It just allows them to get out that extra creativity that doesn't necessarily work for the band that they spend most of their time.
You can't because the business model for musicians and bands have changed since the death of basically the lack of a better term, the death of the music industry. You don't have those album contracts anymore like you used to. You don't have the record companies literally just paying you a salary, that you eventually pay back. It's so different now. These guys have to do all these other projects, but it's great. I mean, look, Miles Kennedy's got his own thing going on. He's got Slash's thing. He's got Alter Bridge. Mark has Alter Bridge. Mark has Tremonti. Mark has his Frank Sinatra stuff. Mark has Creed. Mark's got a lot of shit going on.
Yeah.
The other two guys in Creed also have Alter Bridge. So they're all keeping themselves busy, and it's just incredible now. You can see that the hate has dissipated from Scott Stapp. And then again, like I said, I think it was more self-inflicted wounds on Scott's part that they had all that hate. At first it was mockery, but then it became like flat out, we hate this guy. And I think it was a matter of every time he opened up his mouth, he said something stupid, sort of like David Lee Roth.
There was quite a bit of that. I think a lot of the hate is unwarranted, just in general, because it doesn't do anything, it doesn't benefit anything. But it was kind of overnight, it was kind of surprisingly fast how people turned on him. I think it's two different things. Like we talked about Nickelback, where it was more of like a meme and jealousy or whatever. I think there was some other aspects, like there was the religious part. A lot of it again was directed towards Scott, and unfortunately the rest of the band had to feel it for that reason. But that hate was not there for Alter Bridge. They moved on. They did their own thing separately, and were able to step right into that without any of the mockery. So I think it was more directed at Scott.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I've heard people who don't like Alter Bridge because they don't like Miles' voice and they'd rather hear Scott's voice, but that's because you think it's the same band. But if you literally gave it a chance to say Alter Bridge is a completely different band than Creed, you got one song on the first album that you can kind of assimilate between the two bands.
But if you go to listen to Mayfield 4, which was Miles' band before Creed,
before Alter Bridge.
Before Alter Bridge, sorry. You could easily say that song sounds like a Mayfield 4 song too.
True. But it's one of those things where, like for instance, when Audio Slave came out, you said, "Wow, this sounds like, Rage Against the Machine with Soundgarden singing." Well, shit, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, but they changed over time too.
But it was
they have to like integrate and find their sound, and, especially when it's essentially a supergroup, right?
Right.
So now they're just a band and they're just doing what they do, but essentially at the beginning they function differently because they're not coming in without industry experience. They're coming in and having to find that sound together.
So that's the deal with Creed. So the last band we're going to talk about, and obviously we've talked about this band a million times, and it's the basis of a lot of our episodes. But Metallica has a completely different kind of hate than all of these bands. And again, while it's a different kind of hate, I think it stems from the same things, which I believe it. For me personally, I believe it stems from jealousy. But we talked about this kind of just between you and I, where Metallica has been hated since 1984 by some faction of their fan base, and that's a long time to hate somebody. And it's a when you think about the band only started the year before or a year and a half before that, like, well, why all of a sudden you hate them? Because they got a song called "Fade to Black." It's a ballad, pretty damn good one, and they still. Like, literally, I remember when if you watch the Cliff Amal video, you see that video with Cliff talking about, people say we sold out because we have Fade to Black, right? This is their second album. It's like, song number 13. They got 10 on the first one and 3. By the time they hit the third song, or 14, the fourth song on side 1, they've got hate.
I mean, Metallica has a lot of different eras and time. I mean, they've been around for a long time at this point, right? So, 50 years.
40.
40. Sure. 40 years. I don't know what I'm thinking. Let's just round up.
Iron Maiden's 50 years.
Yeah, that's right. So, anyway, the thing with Metallica is they have a lot of different reasons that people hate them, and it's not just one or two. And I don't think most of them are justified.
Cut the hair.
There's that. There's the Napster thing.
I mean, let's go over all the reasons why people hate Metallica. So they wrote a ballad in 1984.
They fired Dave Mustaine.
Which in reality, no one kind of knew about that, and they weren't.
There are people that hate them now because of it,
right? Which is weird because
that's an argument I've heard from people, saying this.
Yeah, and from people who had no idea that had happened back in 1983.
They might have not have even been born.
Right. 1989, they did a video.
Yep.
They got hate for one.
Doing a video.
Okay, so now they got hate on the video.
They hate for not having any bass on the album, so people hate them because they mistreated Jason.
Right, which in reality, at the time that happened, no one realized that it was hazing.
Yeah.
All they know is that they came out with this album that, if you had a really good sound system, had a lot of bass, had a lot of low-end guitar work, but there was no bass guitar.
By 95, people knew that.
Right.
It was hazing.
So now, you right after that, now you have the Black Album. So now they've changed their style.
Changed styles.
They
sold out.
They sold out. They've got Bob Rock as a record producer, and Bob Rock made Enter Sandman, and Bob Rock did this, and Bob Rock did that. You know what? Last thing I checked, if you look at the song credits, Bob Rock's name is not anywhere on the song credits. So Bob Rock didn't make him do anything. Okay, Bob Rock, all Bob did was get them to where they wanted to go at that time. And that's the way I see it. They wanted to write shorter songs. They wanted to write simpler songs. We need somebody to help us do that. Hey, boom, there's Bob Rock. If it wasn't Bob, it was going to be the next best producer.
But people will illogically say, well, somebody should have told him no.
Right.
Right, so, yeah, I get it. I mean, so let's keep going with the reasons.
Okay, so now we got, then we go to Load and Reload. They cut their hair. They're alternative metal.
Yeah.
Right?
Country rock.
They're country rock. Okay, so then now all of a sudden, they're playing with the symphony, because that hadn't been done before, right? So they're with the San Francisco Symphony. They're playing with Michael Kamen.
I haven't heard too many people hate them for that one, but I'm sure there's some.
But there was, at the time when it came out in 1999, 98, there were people. 98 was garaging. 99 was S&M, right? And all of a sudden, it's like, well, they're playing with an orchestra. They're not the same. They're playing. They're whatever. And then 2000, I Disappear, the Napster issue.
Yes, Napster was a big.
So now
Napster bad. The video alone.
Yeah, Napster bad. Yeah. Look, I get that, right? Which is funny because now, if you talk to anybody in the industry music now, and in the music industry at this moment, they will say Lars was right. We should have defended him.
Yeah.
But we were too chicken shit, and they were. Okay, Lars was absolutely dead on right. Now, should he have done what he did and go after the individual users and get that all exposed, all the Napster accounts? Maybe that was the wrong way of handling it. Maybe not. But bottom line is that that's what happened. So yes, ton of hate.
Yeah.
Now let's hold on to that Napster thing for a little bit. We're gonna pin that, and we're gonna go to the next thing of hate. Jason leaves.
Yes.
Okay, so now all of a sudden Jason leaves. James is in rehab. So there's necessarily no hate with this, but all of a sudden Metallica is in limbo, and then the next thing you hear is they have this album coming out that is going to be a return to their roots, and it's going to be the thrashiest thing they've done since Kill 'Em All, and these things.
I remember sitting at the lunch table telling my friends this exact rhetoric, like saying, "Oh, this album is going to be a return to form." That's all you heard, right? I hadn't heard any of the music that I had heard from all these, news outlets or whatever.
Right.
Whatever I found that data on. I remember sitting at the table across from him saying, "Metallica's back."
Right, and we hadn't heard a damn thing yet, right? So then I remember reading reviews about the drum sound. Now, it was hard to imagine what the drum sound was, but they, a lot of guys said, there's blast beats, and I'm like, blast beats on Metallica? Wow, okay. Blast beats on Metallica. There's, they couldn't even describe the sound that the drums were making because I think they were told not to totally give it away. Because when they went into, so all the critics that went in to listen to it, they were not allowed to record anything. They were not allowed to bring their phones. No recorders, no phones, no video. All they were allowed to have was...
I wish that the producers got the same instruction.
So all they could go in there was with a pen and a paper. And then they were basically, at the mercy of whatever they were going to listen to. And man, were they subjected to some stuff.
So they got hate for Saint Anger.
So they got hate for Saint Anger. It comes out in 2003. They get hate for Saint Anger. They get
hate for Some Kind of Monster.
So they get then it comes the movie that attaches to it. They get hate for Some Kind of Monster. Okay, so now they're being hated on because they're being absolutely brutally honest about their personal lives. And it's like, what else can they possibly do? So we've gone through all this hate from Metallica. Now, so yeah, it's 2004. Some Kind of Monster comes out, and let's move on. So now after that, the hate is because now their album is too brick-walled. Okay, it doesn't sound good. It's distorted because it doesn't sound the way it does when you download the files for Rock Band and Guitar Hero, because Death Magnetic comes out, produced by Rick Rubin. He brings him back to a thrashier kind of style, and now the album's brick-walled. Sound is too loud. More hate.
Yeah. I think a lot of it was, at this point, like 2008, was just people are done. People are just done. And so there's a lot of it. Like when I was talking to people back then, I was in college, and I was saying, this album's really good, the songs are good, and a lot of people that I knew that liked Metallica in the past, that have kind of moved on to other stuff. We're more just like, I don't really care. Like I'm done. I'm over it. So I think obviously there's a lot of people that are still fans that'll always be fans, but some of the stuff like continuous drama and I think one of the biggest thing that turned people against him was some kind of monster. Just kind of oversharing, putting everything out there, all the dirty laundry, was very unappealing to a lot of metal fans who don't kind of share all that stuff and don't want that out in the world, and thought like, just keep that stuff to yourself. And I don't necessarily agree with it. I think being more open can be a really good thing. Like kind of putting yourself out there in the world is it allows other people to connect with you on some level. But it just is what it is. Like it was a lot of the moves they made. It appealed to certain people and continued to grow their audience, but it drove off a lot of the people. Like I think there's, like you said, you went over like a timeline of all these things in a way, and systematically they drove off fans that they had, but they also brought in new fans. And there's people that never stop listening that say they hate Metallica, that continuously will not tell people that they listen to him. There's got to be, there's 10 people in a room and 8 people say they hate him, but they sold, 8 albums. Like 6 of those people are not being honest, right? So what I'm saying is, like, I think some of the hate's warranted in some ways. You glossed over the Lars hate in general. Like, it's not just the Napster stuff. Some people just think he's a bad drummer. Well, or they just don't like his personality.
Yeah, we stopped at Death Magnetic, but
that's kind of where I think it ends. Like,
and realistically, when Hardwired came out, and
I didn't hear a lot of talk about Hardwired.
No, and it wasn't. But the one thing I hear, so Hardwired was 72 seasons, relatively similar sounds, both produced by Greg Fiddleman. And I think there's even better sound on 72 seasons than there was on Hardwired. But for me, the hate that continues to prevail out there is the Lars hate, like you're talking about. And that's the new thing now.
He's the biggest polarizing figure in the band for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Where James Hetfield, while he is,
although Kirk is number 2, and I'm not saying it's warranted, but there's a lot of people that hate Kirk.
And that's weird because why? And again, to me, why do people hate Kirk?
It's because they don't put him up on the high standard of guitar players.
Okay.
The joke is always that he relies so much on the wah-wah pedal, right?
Right, his wah-wah.
And so, if you have a list of greatest guitar players, he's not sitting up there, right?
He's on mine.
I know he's on yours, but that it's almost like you're picking on somebody that's really benign in a lot of ways, right? Like the music, when it comes to Metallica, at least for me, James Hetfield is where Metallica comes from. Like it's his band, it's his music. Without James, the band can't exist.
Right.
But the band also really doesn't exist without Lars.
Absolutely.
And so, like, it is what it is. Like him or hate him, he's like the 2 guys. That's Metallica. At least to me. I think you could place either of the other 2 and it would be okay.
Well, the bass player's been replaced 4 times. So
true. But you get what I'm saying. Like you could still replace Kirk and it's not the end of the band. But I think
you have to put Slash in because Slash is another king of wah.
Yeah, sure.
So
but I think it's much harder to replace either of them.
No, absolutely. It's harder to replace James because James is the songwriter. James is the riff writer. And it's hard to replace. It's hard to replace Lars, and it's not about the drumming. It's about the arranging. It's about the song.
Without Lars, James doesn't continue the band. I think that's really the truth of it. I find it hard to believe.
He won't continue Metallica, but I think he'll continue to play.
Yeah. But Metallica doesn't continue with Lars is gone, I think. But
which brings a really strange kind of, when you think about the history of the band, and supposedly they wanted to fire Lars when they came back from Europe right before Cliff died.
and maybe that's true, but they've also been now put in another 30 plus years.
Oh yeah, now it's a different story. But when you think about that, they wanted to replace Lars. But even back then, Lars was an integral part of the songwriting and the song structure that they come up with, and the not the writing part about it, but the arrangement.
Yeah,
he has always been that guy.
And it's an important part, but I don't put it up there. Like, I think if you had a different person arrange some of the stuff that James put together, I think you still come up with hit songs.
Oh, I mean,
I'm not saying I'm not 100% devaluing that. I'm just saying, like, I think James is still a star no matter where he goes.
Right, absolutely. I think what Lars' value to Metallica, besides his incredible drum playing, is his innate ability to figure out the puzzle that is the Metallica riffs.
Yeah.
That create the songs.
I think their compatibility is what drives Metallica. But so like, to kind of get away from that, like, just more like why people hated them. I mean, like, let's go to the beginning. Let's go like they're a thrash band, then they become not quite as much but that thrash band. They're just a metal band. That's within the first couple years of their existence, at least in the eyes of certain people. I still consider, like, in my mind, I think of the first 4 albums as kind of thrash albums. Obviously, there's some different stuff, but people just didn't. If it was slightly different than anything else that was coming out of that Bay Area, then they hated it. So I think that's pretty unwarranted. I don't think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they got lumped in with the Bay Area thrash scene. They had thrash music. But even when you think about it, okay, everyone talks about, well, without Dave Mustaine, Metallica's nothing, right? But if you break it down, the songs that Metallica play the most off of Kill 'Em All, none of them are Dave songs. And that's the curious part. Is that because they don't want to give Dave publishing? Well, I don't know. But Seek and Destroy...
Maybe he didn't write them, but he still brought his playing aesthetic and things to the band too.
I totally get that part. What I'm saying is, like, Seek and Destroy was written by James Hetfield, okay, and I believe Lars was helping in the arrangements.
Yeah.
Okay, nothing to do with Dave. Hit the Lights, okay, written before Mustaine was even in Metallica.
Yeah.
There's Whiplash. Nothing to do with Dave Mustaine, but people still, they still play that song. Seek and Destroy is one of their set closers that they have. Hit the Lights is one of their, they have been for a while, a show opener. It's sometimes used as a encore opener. Okay, I mean, they don't play Phantom Lord. They don't play Jump in the Fire. The only other one that I can sit there and say that they play on some sort of regular basis, but not even that regular, would be the Four Horsemen, which was originally Mechanics. Okay, but they changed the lyrics to be less sexual, more along the lines of what Metallica is now. Okay, and then you go from there. Ride the Lightning has a Dave Mustaine riff in it, and Cthulhu. So it's not like they're afraid to do songs that Dave wrote. So I don't see that justification in it.
I don't think it's that. I think it's just that, like, they replaced Dave with a lesser guitarist, at least in their minds, and therefore
in fans' minds,
it's bad. Yeah, right. Yeah. So that's. I don't think it's a warranted discussion. I think sometimes personalities just don't work out, and so if you don't like it, cool. Like, that's fine. But I think the hate is still unwarranted.
Oh, I mean, when you look at I believe it's unwarranted too. But when you look at who the people are now, who James is today, or has been for the last 20, 30 years, and when you look at who Dave Mustaine is and what he's done with Megadeth over the last 35 years, right?
Yeah.
if for anyone out there to sit there and say, "Oh, he should never have been fired from Metallica," you are absolutely insane to think that James and Dave would have worked past when it did, because they're two different kind of alpha males that they are, and there's no way those two could have coexisted in the band. Maybe they could do a collaboration now, but to sit there and say as band leaders that they were going to get along, it was never going to happen. So it's one of those things. The hate towards Metallica because they fired Dave is completely unwarranted, like I said.
And vice versa, the hate towards Dave because he got kicked out of Metallica, that's stupid too.
Yeah.
So all of it's dumb. What was the next one? The next one is the ballad.
The ballads, right?
So, they're just progressing with music. I still stand by it that Ride the Lightning is probably their best album. It's up in the air between Ride the Lightning and Master for me. Any given day, I might change my mind on which one's better album, right? But yeah, like the stuff that they're progressing towards doing something slightly different. Who cares? You don't like the song, skip the song, move on. The rest of the album's kick ass. So I think that one's unwarranted.
Well, if you think about, again, it goes back to, thrash songs, right? Trapped Under Ice, thrash song. Creeping Death, thrash song. Fight Fire with Fire, thrash song. Ride the Lightning, the song itself, is more it's a heavy methodical song. Okay,
It still fits in with thrash though.
It fits in. Yeah. Okay, obviously, For Whom the Bell Tolls, no. It's not a thrash song.
No, it's
a really good fucking song.
Ass, yeah.
Right? Fade to Black. The end is thrashy. Okay, the guitar, that guitar solo lead out, is pretty quick, pretty thrashy. Okay, Escape, not a thrash song. It was written to be a hit single, which the band hated the song, specifically James. And then Cthulhu, the instrumental. Okay, you have the same exact formula for the next two albums. Okay, you have thrashy a thrashy intro song, longer, less thrashy but still thrashy title track. Then you got a slow plodding song, and you've got the ballad, and you change it to side 2 if you got a cassette or an album, and you open up side 2 with a thrashy song, slow plotter, or a slower, more progressive song, instrumental, and then a fast song at the end. But with Justice, they did two or three thrashier songs. So it's the formula exactly the same, all three albums, and it's weird because, I've listened to And Justice for All recently in its entirety, and there's a part of me that sits there and says, man, all these songs are really good, like almost to the point where I would say as a collective, it's better than Master of Puppets. And I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that, how can you say such a thing? But
there's probably a lot of people that agree with you too.
Right, and then but again, my favorite album is always going to be Ride the Lightning because it's the first one it's the first thing that introduced me to this style of music.
Yeah.
All right, so you got that hate, and then you got the hate for the video. Is that warranted?
No, it's very mainstream to do a video, right?
But Metallica never did a video, dude.
But it's a killer video, so I don't think so.
Yeah, it's not warranted, because it's one of those things where it's like, again, people are going to hate because they want to hate. They're going to like and dislike something just because. But that was the next step in the evolution of a band that was ever evolving right in front of your eyes. Okay? They did one video, and when you think about the video itself, it's fucking depressing.
Yeah.
Black and white, slow song about a guy who basically is a lifeless lump of a body who all he could do is move his head. He's got no arms, no legs, no eyes, no mouth. Can't hear. So it's like, it's literally a vegetable.
Well, no, literally. He's not a cantaloupe. Well, that's not a vegetable either. he's not a cucumber.
But like in the sense of human terms, yes. So that's a depressing video. And then so now you got all sorts of hate. You got hate for more videos. You got hate for the fact that they're playing shorter songs. There's no double bass. There's enter Sandman, for lack of a better term. It's not heavy, sad but true. It's like.
What's sticking out to me though is any of the hate that's happened, right? They're still on the upswing. They're still on the rise.
Yeah.
At this point, so it's different than the hate that say Nickelback and Creed got, because this kind of hate that they're receiving, it's still being offset by their growth as a band in popularity. So they didn't get derailed in that same way. I think what derailed them is again insane anger. That's where a lot of people jumped off the bandwagon and just said I don't want anything to do with this band. I think a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, the hate is unwarranted. The things that are happening, it's a minority though that's saying these things, and I guarantee you, even though people are saying I don't like the video, they're still listening to the band. They're still sticking around. There's so many people that I know that I don't like this band anymore. They used to be my favorite band, and they're still listening to every release they put out.
Yeah.
So I mean, I definitely don't think this was warranted. Do I So we're at the Black album, right? Black album is a landmark album. It's massive. It's sold more than anything else. It's huge. Do I think any of the hate for that is warranted? Not necessarily hate, but I understand why people would completely drop off, right? It's a pretty big divergence from what they had done before. They went from being a metal band to a hard rock band in a lot of people's mind, and I think that's kind of true.
I can see that side of it where you say, they went from a metal band to a hard rock band. In reality, when you look at what metal was for that period, they're no longer that thrash metal band.
Yeah.
Right? But they're still a metal band. I mean, when you look at Holier Than Thou or some of the song, what's the song that leads off Through the Never? Okay.
Yeah, but there's offset. Some of those are still pretty heavy, right? But it's offset by Nothing Else Matters, Unforgiven. Wherever I May Roam is still pretty soft in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, there's some heavy drumming or whatever, but for the most part, there are some moments, even Enter Sandman, where they're just it's a lot softer than the stuff that came before.
Right.
And again, it's not bad. I personally never need to hear the Black Album again, but
we're going to listen to it on the way home.
It's still a stellar album. I mean, it's still a landmark that I think the first time anybody listens to it, it's mind-blowing.
Absolutely. And you had a metaphor before about the train, okay, and people getting off the train. Here's the funny thing, and they're still on the upswing, right? So the train, let's look at their career as a train, and the train going through stops throughout their life, right? The train starts off at stop number 1, it's first album, second album, third album, whatever, and people are coming on board. They're going to work, and as the train's getting through these albums, it's getting more and more full, right? All of a sudden, they hit this one album, they got a video, and they get to the stop of the Black Album, and literally, let's just say they're turned off so many fans that half the people get off the train. But what other people are not seeing is that 5 times, 10 times more people get on at that stop than they had before, right? And then all of a sudden you go to the Load albums, and you know what? It's funny. A big shit ton of people get off the Load albums, but twice as many people get on. And that's the amazing thing about what the career of Metallica has been throughout the entire 40 plus years. It is people get off, more people get on. People get off, even more people get back on. And someone said to me the other day that if Metallica weren't playing the hits, that no one would be going to their shows. Okay? Well,
then that kind of apply to most people.
Well, yes and no, but think about
we're only going to play deep cuts. I wonder how all those tours would go.
Well, let's say we are actually literally going on a deep cut concert tonight.
Yes and no, but they're still going to be playing songs that appeal to a lot of people,
but not a majority. Okay, I mean, if this tour is highlighting, for talking about Iron Maiden, this tour is highlighting their brand new album Sujitsu. Brand new meaning a couple years old.
Yeah.
Right? And it's also highlighting Somewhere in Time because they're doing a retro portion of this show. Now, there are going to be a few songs that are
it's not
older.
Like they're picking songs off of the two Blaze albums, and the Gangland. They're picking song, and if you're anybody that doesn't know, we're going to see Iron Maiden right now. Just if you're jumping on
right
later. Yes, I get your point, but at the same time, I think that applies to most people if you're not playing at least some of your hits.
Well, but look at Poison hasn't had a new album in how many years? Kiss finished their last the End of the Road tour. They hadn't put out a new album in at least 6 years at that point, and they were playing one song off of that, and for no reason at all, because I don't know why they even picked that song to play, because they should have picked other songs.
Which song was it?
Oh my God, I don't even remember what the name of the song was.
Nobody else does either.
No, I mean, it was like, oh, it's potty break time. Okay? But, they were playing the hits. But for Metallica, for someone to sit there and say, well, if they're not playing the hits, no one's going to go. Well, let's think about this. This is a 72 seasons tour, and they're playing at least, they're doing 2 nights in every city that they're stopping in.
I get what you're saying.
So they're playing, five to 6 songs off of the new album over 2 nights. So over 4 hours, right? But, not every night, because it's a no-repeat weekend. So they're not playing Master of Puppets on one night. They're not playing them both nights, only one. Right? Seek and Destroy, only one night. Enter Sandman, only one night. They're splitting it. Right? So it's a 4-hour greatest hits event, but that's how good Metallica songs are. You have 4 hours worth, right? So it's not about, and literally, what are we talking about when we're talking about Metallica hits? When we're talking, are we talking about the general public hits? Because in literally you're talking about a small portion of songs.
They're playing the songs that everybody knows, and then they're playing songs that metal fans know.
Right, but nothing else matters. Can only be played once. Nothing else matters is the biggest Metallica song not named Enter Sandman that the general public knows.
Well, I don't know. Master of Puppets got that big.
Well, now Master of Puppets.
The TV show.
TV show. So you got 3 songs. Enter Sandman, Master of Puppets, and Nothing Else Matters are the 3 biggest songs Metallica had. And they're not doing it at every show, because one show over the weekend is not going to have one of those 3 songs. Or 3 of them. They might play them all on one night.
Or maybe they just all play, stuff off of, maybe like Fixer.
But look, obviously people know what Wherever I May Roam is. People know, For Whom the Bell Tolls. But that's their fan base.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're playing to the fan base. You're not playing. The general fan does not know what For Whom the Bell doesn't know For Whom the Bell Tolls. I'm sorry. A solid Metallica fan does.
I don't know. If you listen to the Buzz in the early 2000s,
oh yeah, they were playing it all the time.
Yeah.
Right, but to sit there and say,
so they have 40 years of fan base to build upon too.
Right.
So some of the crowd may not know certain songs, but a lot of the crowd does.
Right, and what I'm saying is, to me, you can't sit there and tell me, if they didn't play the hits, nobody's going to come. Because in reality, what what the hits are for Metallica. First of all, almost all of them are hits when you think about it, right? So, the first four.
I still think it's a dumb argument.
It is a dumb argument.
If Madonna goes on stage and says, "I'm not playing any of my hits," people are going to be like, "Well, I want to hear them, though." You know,
right? Well, but
it doesn't matter who it is. I'm just saying, like, any musician, if the goal is not to play hits, then I think they're going to have a hard time making sales.
True, I totally understand what you're saying, and Metallica's not going out saying we're not playing the hits.
No, I get it.
But it's like for someone else to say that,
I know, I'm just saying it's
right.
a dumb argument.
It is a dumb argument. So to get back to the hate thing, right? We were talking about the train, and people just keep getting on the train and getting on the train, and for them to be at this stage, okay, of the game, 40 plus years later, being able to sell out stadiums, okay, 2 nights over a weekend, not just one, but 2 nights, okay, that's a testament to their fan base. It's a testament to the music and the music industry. But it's one of those things where it's like, so they can have all the hate in the world, but you know what? Every night they go on stage and they are the shit.
So there is a psychological aspect of it where, like, people need a place to be, right? And they want to relate to other people on some level. So, like, if I go around saying I'm going to a concert and I say, like, I'm going to Metallica, a lot of people are going to be able to go, oh, that's cool, I know that one of their songs. But if I go, I'm going to Armored Saint, a lot of people are going to be like, well, I don't know who that is. You know?
Right.
And
right.
so, like, no disrespect to Armored Saint, we love Armored Saint. We saw them recently. It was one of the best shows.
You're wearing an Armored Saint shirt right now?
That's the reason I said it, because I'm wearing the shirt. But my point is that, like, sometimes some of that popularity is just based on commonalities between people, right? So, like, Metallica's played everywhere. They continue to have, like, that one song, whatever it may be, maybe everybody resonates with that one song. Say, for instance, Nothing Else Matters, because it did hit a lot of mainstream ears, it hit a lot of fans' ears. So it's like they all can relate on that level. And so when you say the name, there's that recognition. That person you're talking to may not know any of the songs, or may know only one of them or something like that. They may know it when they hear it, but they don't know the name. There is that level of, like, synchronicity there with people, where they just need to have that commonality too. So I think that it's a testament to all those things that you said as well. As far as where we are on the hate train,
and yeah, they have a song called "Hate Train" too.
Yeah, it was double undone. So as far as where we are there, like, so we are at load and reload. I mean, it's a pretty big divergence. You know, there's the photography issue with inside the I think there's certain fans that, like, when they bought an album, they want to see the lyrics, they want to do all these things. You know, like see who's credited, who's on every little aspect of it, right? Well, they took a big divergence. They kind of went, like, I don't know. I mean, what did James say? They went gay, kind of, right? Like, and so, like, they changed a lot of things, and so they had, like, really kind of weird photography. They cut their hair. They didn't put all of the lyrics in the books anymore. Now they just had, like, select parts of the songs.
I will say that as a longtime fan, that part of Load and Reload really did annoy me.
Yeah,
that they did not have the full lyrics.
You're not the only one. Like, there's a lot of people that was a weird divergence for them. And so it's all these little things that kind of build that.
The photography didn't bother me at all. Anton Corbijn is an artist.
Weird to me, but it didn't, like, turn me off listening to the music.
No, Anton Corbijn is a great photographer. He has a very particular style of shooting his subjects. Very, very. What's the term?
Androgynous.
No. It has nothing to do about the fact that they were, looking the way they look. That's Metallica's choice. But there's a setting on Photoshop that the contrast. Okay, so he has a very heavy contrast.
Yeah.
On his photography, he does mostly black and white and stuff. So the inside album cover had color. So the heavy contrast, created a lot of dark lines, a lot of dark spaces in the photographs. I didn't have a problem with that at all. There were fans that had a problem with all the eye makeup and the overdressing. You know what? Again, that wasn't Anton Corbin's fault. That was, hey, let's do something different, and that's what they chose. And they went for it, dove head first, and made no qualms about it.
Yeah.
And if it annoys someone, I think sometimes bands in general, and specifically in this case Metallica, I think they did it because they knew they were going to get backlash, or they knew they were going to get someone to say something.
Yeah.
It's like, let's see what we can do to piss off somebody now, right? But realistically, like if you look at the pictures from the tour book, exactly the same photographer, exactly the same style, but they're live. So, why is there no complaint for that? Because it wasn't the photographer; it was what they chose to do with the photo shoot. And they can blame the photographer all they want, but
I don't know if I've ever blamed it, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's kind of unwarranted. Where the hate makes more sense for me is, again, like just really changing the style. Like, I know it's going to push people away.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that definitely was not thrash metal for any sake of the means. It wasn't heavy metal.
It was the biggest departure.
It's definitely, I mean, to be a departure from the Black Album means that it was a 180 departure from Justice. But I see Lars's point where they got as progressive as they could possibly get. Where do you go from there? Well, unlike Pantera, who decided to get even harder,
Yeah.
they went in the opposite direction. More power to them that they could do it, and they could do it successfully. And so now they have the load and reload controversies. The album covers, the colors, the makeup, the look, whatever. They cut their hair. Big fucking deal about the hair. Like the hair all of a sudden made James's hand slower because he doesn't have the weight on his head anymore. Shit like that was stupid.
People just don't like change. I mean, even when I cut my hair, you remember, like, people had reactions just in the last few years. Or this year, I guess it was. But even when I did it in high school, I remember I had long hair. I decided to cut it, and people had reactions to it. I'm like, it's not your hair. You're like,
right. I mean, hell, I grew out my hair last year in 2023 in a mohawk the whole year, or 10 months out of the whole year. And, there were some people that didn't know me before the mohawk. Some people looked at me like, what's with the mohawk? And other people like, yeah, that's cool. And then when Halloween came around, I took some really cool pictures with my daughter, and we used those pictures up, and then, right after that, I cut off my mohawk because it was time for change. It is what it is. I mean, that whole argument about the hair is just ridiculous. I mean, even Alice in Chains got in on the act when they said friends don't let friends give friends haircuts. Yeah. On Mike Inez's bass. Considering Mike Inez has like some of the most gorgeous hair in metal. I love his hair. But, it's for lack of what is, Lane Staley never had long. Well, he had long hair at one point. Cut it.
Yeah, he had long hair before they really took off. And he was like the older version of it. Even the first few years of Alice in Chains, like the actual Alice in Chains, he still had long hair.
Yeah, and Jerry Cantrell doesn't have long hair. Is he a different guitar player? than he was before? No. You know? So the hair argument is dumb.
Yeah.
Okay, now we jump into where, the symphony. Okay, they did a symphony. Kiss did a symphony. Metallica did a symphony. Who else did? Everybody, Scorpions did a symphony.
There's a lot of them. And that's, I don't remember ever, like, maybe I'm mistaken, maybe I just didn't hear it, but I don't remember anybody being upset about the symphony thing.
It wasn't very loud, per se, but there's always going to be people, I can't believe they played with the symphony, because they were selling out. They were, doing, something else that other people were doing. I'm sorry, Deep Purple, one of Lars Ulrich's favorite bands of all time, played with a symphony in the early 70s. The fact that he was able to replicate something that his favorite band did back in the day, you know what? More power to him. And more power to Michael Kamen, rest in peace. Michael didn't just do a symphony that that expanded on the riffs. He wasn't just copying the riffs and playing the same songs in a violin version. He was actually writing music that was complementary. In many cases, it wasn't even the same riffs. It wasn't even the same stuff. It was different pieces of music that were added to make the song different and more symphonic.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it was. It was
like Kiss.
Accent.
Right, they were accents. Where Kisses were, when Kiss did it, they literally just replicated the music with the symphony orchestra.
Yeah.
But Metallica was completely different. And more power to them to be able to go through that and figure that out.
Yeah.
So now, we talked Saint Anger. We talked about the drumming with Saint Anger. I mean, it's just insane with the way it sounded. It sounds tough to listen to this day. Songs were rough. They were more chopped up. Very computerized.
To me, it's just like it's something that should have been left on the cutting room floor. They should have never released it. Get the stuff out, deal with it. But it's one of those things that nobody told them no, and it didn't work out. So they had to go through several years of, kind of getting back on the same page. Then they go to Death Magnetic, and things were certainly better. I mean, the talk about the album was, more positive. Yeah, sure, there was some talk about the production, but the hate wasn't the same. Like, people that really don't like Metallica because of all the things that we're talking about, they were just like, it's a decent album, but the production sucks. And it wasn't the same kind of just hate that I remember hearing prior to.
No, I think by this time, 2016, it wasn't even hate anymore. It was just like, oh yeah,
indifference.
Yeah, it became indifferent, and it wasn't hate. It was just like, yeah, it's a new Metallica album. I'm never going to buy it, yeah. And it was the first thing that they bought that day. It's like everyone goes out and says, I'm not going to buy it, but they're the ones buying it.
Right? Well, there's collector syndrome, right? Like, I have it with comics. I still buy comics, right? And I'll purchase stuff that I know I'm probably not going to like because I still feel that need to, like, complete the run or whatever, So there is some of that. There is some of that, like, I hope that I like this, but I may not. So it's tough. But again, like, I think that most of the hate is generated from a few different eras of the band. I think obviously there's the transition away from thrash. That's a big one. And then the Saint Anger stuff. I think that's probably the most justified. And not from, like, I don't think any hate is really justified per se. But I think, like, that to me stands out the most because really a lot of it was the music industry lying to us, saying that this was a return to form and this was buy this album, and we all bought it based on the merit of the name Metallica alone. We didn't hear anything of it before. We had all these industry professionals telling us it was an amazing album, and it was a bunch of fucking bullshit. Like, don't lie. Just shelve it and put something else out. Or just, it is what it is. It's fine. We've all moved past it. There's been much better albums by the band that have come out. Hardwired's pretty great. I think it's too long and it's little unfocused at points. But both of us really loved 72 Seasons, and hopefully in the future we'll see some more great stuff. So, I think it's certainly a different type of hate, or at least types of hate, than Creed and Nickelback got, for sure.
One thing we forgot to mention in all this hate for Metallica, Lulu.
Lulu was it was a flash in the pan. Yeah, people hated it, but I think again it was already past the point of where like the real hate was coming from. It was a joke, and people laugh, like there's the meme of "I am the table" and all that stuff. Like, but at the same time, you don't hear people go back and be like, "I hate Metallica because of Lulu." I don't think that's one of those. Like, it was again one of those. You're already past that point.
Yeah, they were so indifferent to it. It's like, oh, yeah. What did they do now?
What do they do now? Yeah.
But look, for what it's worth, Lulu was.
I couldn't get through it. I'll be honest.
I couldn't. I tried to listen to it. I could not get through it.
Couldn't get through it.
I was like, man, I'll give credit where credit is due. They went out of their way to do something artsy, and man, I don't know what happened, but it was it wasn't my cup of tea. And my cup of tea is pretty big, okay, pretty big, but that just I could not get through it. I mean, the song with "I Am Table" on it, it's not a bad song, but other parts.
It's a bad song, but like
no, I don't think it's a bad song.
Like, cool moments, but it's a bad song.
I don't think the song itself is bad. The things around it are pretty rough and bad, and I think another thing that I think people didn't realize, they didn't realize how out there Lou Reed really is or was.
I mean, he released an album that's just like static noise.
He was an odd individual, and but at the same time, he taught Metallica so much during those sessions, because they were sitting there, they record us off, and he would say his thing, and they're like, all right, let's do it again. And he's like, why? Why do I have to repeat myself? That came out fine. And they were like, okay. And they literally looked at themselves and said, what do we do? And, Greg Fiddleman, who produced it, is like, we just leave it. That's it. I mean, there's nothing else they can do. So that was a strange, and, the hate that's happened in the last, I guess you could say 15 years, because it's a long time, is more about mockery than actual hate, and indifference.
Yeah, I think it's indifference. Like they don't have the mockery that Nickelback has endured by any means, because at the end of the day, there's still a level of respect there. Like the albums that they put out that are truly solid. Like it's really hard because that is Black Album's how many times platinum?
16, almost 17 in the US.
At the end of the day, like they could put out another garbage album and they still have a 16-time platinum album, right? Like so, I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying like there is a mental aspect to people where when something like that happens, there is a level of respect that is just not really going to go away unless somebody in the band did something really disgusting, right? Like that's the only thing I could think of, like a Bill Cosby kind of thing. Like,
right.
Bill Cosby has an amazing show. It's landmark. Everybody respects it. You don't see that show on TV anymore because of his situation. So that's the only thing I could think of that would tarnish the legacy of Metallica.
Yeah, and I don't see that happening. However, I'm a fan, and you never know what's going to happen, because I don't think anybody saw Bill Cosby happening. But I'm pretty sure a lot of people saw Sean Diddy happening. But
oh God, yeah. Not to get into all that. Like obviously, right. That's a scenario we don't ever want to even hear about or talk about or whatever. But anyway, the point is, stop hating these bands. Just listen to what you want to listen to. And, or if hate's the only thing that's fueling you to live, then I guess continue doing that. I don't really care.
Do your own thing. Leave me out of it. That's basically the bottom line. Well, we have arrived at our destination. Amazingly enough, right for the end of the show. So we are going to go check into our hotel room. We're going to go enjoy Iron Maiden. We will see you next time.
And remember to always turn it up to 11.
See ya!